Shabbat Shalom. In the old days, before email and text messaging, if you wanted to get a message to somebody that lived in the other side of the country, what would you do? Telegram, exactly, because we all use Telegram. Anybody here ever actually use a telegram? Okay, we got a couple hands. I'm guessing that most of us use a more prosaic and slightly slower method of information transmission. U.S. mail, right? The Postal Service. The good old Postal Service could get your mail across the country in a while, but to do so, it needed some information. It needed the address. Because if I just wrote, to Joshua Neely, what are the odds if I drop that in a post box, it's going to end up on my doorstep? Zero. If I write to Joshua Neely and I also put my street address, is it going to get to me? Probably not. Depends on how common. If I'm, living on 123 Magnolia Street, it's probably never going to get me because there's a Magnolia in every town in this country. I get agreement from that. If I then have to add my city, right? If I can add the city, then is it going to get to me? It's going to be closer. Because I could be living in Springfield. And if I live in Springfield, it could be any state. That's why the Simpsons chose Springfield as the name of the main town, because that is a city that is in every state of the Union. Or I then need to put in my state, and if I want to just cut to the chase, I could do zip code. But zip codes came much later. We always had name, street address, city, state, country if you're going international, and with all of that bit of information, it could reach you. So maybe you understand, now that we are at the end of the book of Bamidbar, now that we are at the end of this portion of the Torah, why we are counting so much, why we are listing so much, why we are enumerating so much. That we're not just saying that there's this guy Moses, we are saying there's this guy Moses. And his parents are Amram and Yocheved, and they are descended from Levi, and Levi was one of the 12 tribes that came from Jacob, and he's one of the tribes that came from the wife known as Leah, and now we know exactly who we mean when we say Moses. Did I not know that before? And do I need to know that now? Isn't it just enough to say Moses? He's Jewish. He's a guy. And why do I need to get his address, to single him down so carefully? Well, because by doing so, we are actually making a much more profound statement about identity in general that is still incredibly relevant and powerful for us today. Look up that wheel above us there. I make reference to it all the time because it's one of the most beautiful parts of our sanctuary architecture. And of course, upon it, the outer ring represents the 12 tribes, exactly, meaning the 12 sons that came from Jacob. Now, why do we have tribal affiliations? Aren't we all just Jews? Why do I care that some people were from Judah and some people were from Benjamin and some people were from Naphtali? Why did the Bible seem to care that some of those people, like Joseph and Benjamin, came from one mother, and others came from different mothers, with Jacob having 4 different mothers to the children that he bore? Well, because that part of their heritage, that part of the differentiation matters. All of us are, I am willing to wager, a little more familiar, maybe closer, to the people that we call family. Yet, we also probably have a close family or extended family that's still within our same town or within the same state. Maybe we have more distant cousins. Maybe we have second cousins that might even live internationally. I know many of our congregants have relatives abroad, and that is still a ring of connectivity and a ring of identity. They are still part of my life, but I would be silly if I thought that they were the immediate part of my life, like the people who actually live on the street address of my house. Everybody following me so far? Now, these different layers of identity made a difference in your daily life. Go back to the biblical time. Let's imagine for yourself that you are a member of one of these tribes. Let's say that you are a member of the tribe of Judah. Great. You know where you live, central Israel. the area that is probably most famous in many people's minds as being the core of Israel itself, and you are living there, but where are you living? Which city are you living in? Are you living in a city like Jerusalem? Or are you living in a city further out? That will make a difference. Being urban or rural is another layer to your identity. Now, even if you are in the urban, that may not be the same. You may be a scribe, part of the more educated class, or you may be somebody that is working in the handicrafts. You may be a skilled craftsman working with gold or silver. You may be slightly less socially celebrated and work as a potter or a smith, or perhaps you are a stonemason. All of those would have their own associations and would have their own connections. You would hang out with people from your same profession, even while you also hung out with other people from Judah and other people from your family. Notice the different layers of connection here. You're working with me so far? I know it gets complicated. It's almost as though humans are a kaleidoscope of connections to different people, and different elements from within themselves connect to different people in different ways. You might also be part of the group of people that were selected as the firstborn. You were the firstborn of your mother, therefore you have a slightly different status. There are certain responsibilities incumbent upon you in the social fabric of the ancient world that only other firstborns would recognize and understand. All of these different layers would come together to compose the unique individual of you. It would be your address. You are so-and-so, son of so-and-so and son of so, and you live in this city, and this is your profession, and these are the other features and characteristics about you that are unique and defining not just your individuality, but your shared relationship with others who happen to share that pocket of identity as well. It's complicated, right? Like I said, there's a reason why we call this the Book of Numbers as a nickname, and there's a reason why sometimes people want to just scrap the whole thing and say, look, we're all just Jews, right? That was all biblical. Nowadays, we're all just Jews. Why are we still talking about all of this tribal affiliation and Kohanim and Leviim and the rest of us? Why can't we all just be Jews? Well, we can. That is still the big circle. We are all Jews, but we also have identities within that. If you are an Ashkenazi Jew, coming from a more European background, that puts you in a certain large category. But just because you are Ashkenazi, if you are Ashkenazi from Germany, that does not mean you are identical to Ashkenazi from England or Ashkenazi from Poland. Those will have different customs and different beliefs. And even if you are from Poland and the guy next to you is from Poland, perhaps you are from a Litvak background and he is from a Hasidic background. And you will share a lot in common because of your shared Ashkenazi Polish ancestry, but you will also have many things not in common because of the different ways that your families have celebrated Judaism and embraced Jewish practice. And then the two of you will look across the Mediterranean at somebody who is Sephardi and say, they are very different than us. Still in the circle of being Jewish, but they have very different customs on holidays. They have a different style for some of their prayers. They have a different accent than I have. And perhaps they even eat foods that are flavored differently than I. There's not a lot of borscht in Tunisia. But that does not make them less Jewish. That does not make them better. That does not make them worse. It just makes them a different category within the broader category of Judaism, and that category is worth preserving and saving. That is to say, the goal is not that we should erase all of these subcategories within our vast Jewish tapestry. It is that we celebrate them. Those that are meaningful to us, we hold on to them. We continue to express them. We continue to cherish those traditions, those customs, those practices that make them unique. And we also honor those with different collection. The same thing can be said for the Orthodox, for the Reform, for the conservative movements, Reconstructionist, Renewal, all of the other varieties of Jewish practice out there. We should not be looking to homogenize. We should be looking to recognize that we are a diverse people. Now, with all of this diversity, stretching across the world, stretching from one end to the other, it may surprise you to understand that there is one type of differentiation that Judaism never seemed to latch onto, and that is race. Judaism never seemed to care about what color your skin was, what color your hair was, what shape your nose was, the shape of your lips, your ears, or any other part of you. Judaism never took that as being part of your address. Yes, you might be part of the Satmar, Hasidic, Russian, Eastern European, Ashkenazi, diaspora Jewish community, but no one asked when they were doing that long address of you what color your skin was as being some relevant feature for your Jewish identity. Now, that's not to say that in the modern world, especially, that the color of your skin is a relevant feature to many people's identity, but it is not an especially Jewish element to our identity. We happen to live, those of us here in the 21st century, which I think includes everyone. That's a joke, it's okay. We're all here in the 21st century. Some of us may be a little bit still in the 20th, some people in the 19th, but here in the 21st century, all of us are still carrying the burden of the history of the world, which decided about 500 years ago that the color of your skin was going to be a very big deal, and that this was going to be something over which you had no control, and yet which would pigeonhole you in a way that would be at the top of the address list in the minds of many people around the world. Now, as Jews, we watched this develop and happen, and we scratched our heads. And we went, well, wait a minute. No one cared what Ruth's skin color was, the Moabitess, when she became Jewish and eventually became the ancestor of David. Nobody asked about the color of the skin when Ashkenazi men, when Jewish men went to Ashkenaz before it was Ashkenaz, and many of whom adopted, that's the wrong word, married women who had converted from the local population, and had children that were then an admixture of Semitic as well as Central European as being part of the genetics of that section of the world. No one asked when Jews in the Middle East would eventually also convert and marry together with people that were of different racial typings in the modern lexicon from those that had come originally out of Jerusalem. We look around this room, do we imagine that any one of us represents somehow a pure blood version of what it was to be Jewish in the time of Moses? There was no such thing. Unless you are one of the 12 sons, you're never going to be, quote, a pure-blooded Jew. And they quickly married people who were not born from their father, because that would have been messed up, and instead brought other people into the Jewish people, expanded who we were, and never once held up a color-coded card to decide whether or not this person could be in the Jewish race or what they would mean by being a different color as part of our people. It's funny, though, because although we now have this fixation with race in the modern culture and in the modern conversation, and although that was never part of the Jewish conversation, and certainly never a fixation, we have an interesting marker. We have a way of saying to the rest of the world, look, yes, we are different colors. We have different heritage backgrounds, often associated by how we were treated because we are different colors. But that does not become the sole defining element of our life. We are a blend of things. We are a blend of the Satmar, Hasidic, Polish, Eastern European. We are a blend of all of these things, and race can be added to one of those markers if we wish now, or not, or multiple, as many of us are a blend of different races in, again, the way the modern world wants to talk about race. But we do not need to embrace racial essentialism. We do not need to embrace the obsession with race that still dominates many people's mindset. Instead, we can say, oh, that's cool. You happen to be a different color of skin than I am. You happen to have a different genetic heritage than I do. Great. Let's eat. Let's daven. Let's learn from each other. And you can share your recipes, and I'll share my music, and we'll both share the way that we mangle our pronunciation of different songs or prayers, and together we'll be stronger. And what you bring to the table as one element of you is whatever it is you feel about your racial heritage. But most importantly, we are still that one circle, that single Am, that single nation that is drawn together not because of biology, not even because of our family tree, but because we all in spirit stood at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, and said, "This is my God, this is my Torah, and these are my people." And I'll give you a little secret. When we stare at the soul of a person, there is no race. Shabbat Shalom.